At first, I hesitated on making this video, but I've been asked several times over the past couple years if I'm ever coming back to dunk camp, or why I haven't gone back since the first time I went in 2022. First of all, before I potentially say anything that can be taken out of context, my first time at dunk camp was genuinely one of the best weeks I've ever had in my entire life. That entire week is definitely in the top 3 of the most funnest weeks I've ever had in my whole life. And to people like Andy, who I have the utmost respect for being able to put together and organize something like that is truly amazing. Now, what you're probably wondering is that if I had such a good time and this and that, why have I not gone back? There's not just one singular specific reason why I haven't gone back. There's quite a few reasons, and I'm going to be explaining them in as much detail as I can. The first reason is I simply don't think my experience at dunk camp can be topped. I simply just don't want to take such a good experience like that and have to constantly compare it to other variations of that same experience. It's kind of hard to explain. The only reasons I wanted to go to dunk camp was to meet some of my internet friends that I made during the quarantine era back in 2020, and to also meet the pro dunkers that I watched growing up. And after my first time at dunk camp, I got to do both of those. I became very close with quite a few people, and I got to meet the pros. So I guess I can say I experienced what I wanted to experience, and I just never saw the point in going back. I can definitely see why people go back, and I'm not saying I wouldn't have a blast if I did go back at one point, but for me personally, I just don't see the need to. I may be a little biased, but there is no surpassing dunk camp 2022. Moving on to some of the other reasons why I have not returned back to dunk camp. There were a few things that transpired or existed that I did not like. Now, I'm going based off of my experience in 2022, so some things may have possibly changed since, I don't know, but there is one thing I know that has not changed. As a matter of fact, it's only gotten worse, and that's the amount of illegitimacy that transpires. Now, when I say illegitimacy is one of the big reasons why I have not returned to dunk camp, it's not that I'm calling dunk camp illegitimate. I'm referring to a vast majority of people that attend that are just complete frauds. To be specific, rim heights and the size of the ball being dunked with. The most important thing to me in this niche, or whatever you want to call it, is legitimacy. For some reason in this community, dunking on rim heights down to as low as 9'8", and from what I've seen, even as low as 9'7", has been normalized and oftentimes gets praised. There's this narrative that's been going around that anything above 9'10" or 9'10.5" or whatever counts as a legit dunk. This is the type of bullshit that's being spread. Even though 10 foot on the dot is regulation, and technically speaking, anything done below 10 foot on the dot does not count for shit, I'm well aware that every indoor basketball hoop isn't exactly 10 feet, which that's its own problem. But 99% of average facilities, such as sports complexes, have an average rim height of 9'11.5", and there will not be a rim lower than 9'11". Rec centers aren't as overall legit, but they will have at least one hoop that's above 9'11". The thing is, finding a legit rim isn't the issue. Although some might make the excuse that the only rim they have access to is a flimsy 9'9" rim, which most of the time that statement is bullshit. However, to the small percentage where actually the only rim they have access to is a low rim, and the height of the rim is the first thing I see even before the dunk, and you're not LARPing that it's legit, I don't have a problem with you. My problem is with the people who dunk on low rims to LARP legitimacy, LARP their true skill set, get views, or sell training or programs. Yeah, that's a problem. And if you are one of those people that do that, you're a fraud. You would be surprised on the amount of other dunkers that agree with me, but are too scared to actually speak up and call people out on it. Because if you do call people out for rim height LARPing, they go and complain to the other frauds, and then they go and spread bullshit about you to people higher up in the dunk community, mainly attempting to label you as a hater when all you did was ask what the rim height was, and that's why other dunkers are too afraid to speak up. And I can go on about the rim height topic for hours, but simply put, there's a lot of people that go to dunk camp that think dunk LARPing or rim height LARPing, whatever you want to call it, is perfectly okay. And I do not want to be anywhere near or associated with those types of people. Moving on to the contest system. Now, I didn't participate in any of the contests when I was at dunk camp because I wanted to dunk the first day and the last day during the warm-ups of the dunk show. Even though the 10-foot contest didn't even take place on a 10-foot rim, to my knowledge, the most recent dunk camps have actually had more legit rims, but now they're using an undersized ball to dunk with that's becoming even more normalized as 9'9" LARPing. So yeah, that's just more garbage beginning to transpire. At this point, why not just double the size of the goals in the World Cup? But the issue I'm bringing up wasn't involving the 10-foot contest. The issue was with one of the low rim contests. I'm talking like actual low rim, like 7, 6, and 8 feet. Besides the 10-foot contest, there was a 9-foot contest, an 8-foot contest, and a 7'6" dunk contest. Now, I would assume that the purpose of the 7'6" dunk contest was supposed to be for the kids and the younger teenagers that were there. It's still crazy to me that they let this happen, but people that were 18 and 19 with standing reaches that exceeded the height of the 7'6" rim were allowed to participate. And the person that ended up winning the 7'6" dunk contest was like 19 with a 7'7" reach, and couldn't even dunk on the 9'9" rim with a push-off. Then proceeded to get a trophy and a shout-out from Jordan Kilgannon in front of everyone at the camp. That just should not have happened. This person got a trophy, vocal recognition from the greatest dunker of all time for being an adult beating a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds in a 7'6" dunk contest. I hope most of you watching this would agree that something like that just should not happen. Like, could you imagine the amount of younger kids that probably discouraged? Like, if I was a kid and my whole reason for wanting to go to dunk camp was so I can join the 7'6" dunk contest and dunk in front of the pros, and then I see on the internet there's some bum that's 7 years older than me that won the 7'6" dunk contest against a bunch of little kids, I'd be like, well, fuck this. I don't want to go anymore. The fact that I don't think there were any regulations to begin with was kind of mind-boggling. Perhaps now, a few years later, maybe some things have changed, but if not, for future references, don't let anyone compete in the 7'6" dunk contest that's above the age of 17. And for the low rim contests in general, if someone's standing reach exceeds the height of the rim, maybe don't let them compete on that rim height. Just a thought. And this just kind of goes along with how some of the people are in this community. Not everyone is like this. There's only a few people that will go this low. My point is, there's so many people that are just desperate for even the slightest bit of attention. They're willing to reach record lows to achieve such mediocrity. Another illegitimate factor that I wasn't too much of a fan of, and to be thoroughly honest, I'm not that big of a fan in general, is vertical testing. Vertical testing is another pretty big part about dunk camp, but the thing is, there's so many factors that go into play when confirming the numbers spot on when you're using a Vertec or a vert tester. The biggest issue is that 80% of people are frauding their reach, and then when they go to test, they get some completely false number, and then they go on to brag about it. And oftentimes, these end up being the same people that can't dunk on the 9'9" rim. If everyone wasn't trying to scuff their reach, I wouldn't have an issue with it. Another problem it's created is now some people are completely obsessed with testing their vertical, and now all they do is spam Vertec jumps. The reality is, if you're not a suspected 50-inch jumper, you should not be wasting jumps on a Vertec. Nobody fucking cares. You don't even need a foreign object to test your vertical. If I happen to want to know what any of my numbers are at any given moment, I'll either do a height check or a wrist check, which is 1,000 times more believable because it's a lot easier to spot a low rim than it is to spot a low Vertec. Just, don't fraud your reach. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and this topic I originally didn't plan on mentioning until after talking with several other people that were also at dunk camp in 2022 that kind of confirmed this. Because at first, I didn't really think much of it because I noticed it like one time and it didn't really affect me because I wasn't involved, I guess. I guess I could say I was more of a witness because like I said, I only saw this once from my point of view. I'm not naming anyone, and I'm going to do my best to try and explain this without naming anyone or anything because I still have a ton of respect for these guys. But I'll just say there's pro dunkers who have a jump program, and for the entirety of dunk camp, these pro dunkers would stay in a group with members of their jump program and would mainly only speak to other members of their jump program. And other people that went to interact with these pro dunkers either felt ignored or disregarded simply because they weren't a member of these pro dunkers jump program. So hearing that from multiple different people confirming my assumption, that was pretty disappointing. Like I said, I'm only going off of my experience and what I've been told by some of the other people that were there with me. And you can only really go off of your own experiences. So yeah, that's basically everything that I wanted to explain and talk about. Hopefully this answered a lot of your questions, especially the main one as to why I have not been back to dunk camp since 2022. I'm not saying I'd never go back to dunk camp. If some of my close friends that I met there decide to ever go back at one point, I could definitely see myself making a return as well, assuming I don't get blacklisted after this video. But if you've never been to dunk camp and you've been thinking about going, I would highly recommend going. It's just something that every dunker should experience, and it's definitely worth it. When it comes down to it, all this stuff, it's really not that deep, unless the topic is rim heights, which it is in fact that deep. If I happen to have offended anyone with anything that I've said, I am not sorry. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all back on the next video.